my God. Okay, I need to catch my breath. Just, wow. What happens when the person you cross an entire ocean for treats you like, I don't know, an entry-level intern on probation?
Right. Or when you literally use the phrase, God told me, to just bypass a solid decade of glaring red flags.
Exactly. Today, we are getting into the absolute weaponization of culture, the sheer delusion of control, and that exact precise moment where romantic sacrifice morphs into basically a hostage situation.
I mean, it is the psychology of the sunk cost fallacy playing out in real time, right on our television screens, wrapped in bad fashion and highly questionable legal advice.
Completely. But before we get into the heavy sociological breakdown of these absolute trash fire couples, babes, welcome back. We love you. We see you. And honestly, if our lives were filmed by TLC, we'd probably ask for at least 3 retakes just for our inevitable airport meltdowns of
At
oil.
least 3, minimum.
Minimum. So tell the Snark squad to grab their espresso martinis immediately, because tonight's international relationship chaos requires heavy caffeine and extremely strong cocktails. Cheers to surviving another week of adulthood, babes.
Cheers to that. And, to surviving the absolute delusion we witnessed this week. But wait, speaking of airport meltdowns, I have to address this immediately.
Oh.
Imagine us on The Amazing Race. Like, we've officially been cast, Team Snark side.
Yeah.
Let's just unpack the psychological and logistical disaster that would be.
It would be incredible television, but like a profound personal tragedy. First of all, who is reading the clues? Because it absolutely, unequivocally cannot be you.
Excuse me.
I'm serious. When your cortisol spikes, your executive functioning completely shuts down. You get hopelessly lost trying to find the restroom in a moderately sized Target.
Hey, I resent that.
It's true. If you're holding the yellow envelope in a crowded bazaar in Marrakesh, we are coming in dead last.
Okay, I will have you know, my spatial awareness is entirely vibes-based, which, by the way, is a legitimate navigational strategy in high-context cultures.
Vibes-based navigation, sure.
But fine, you can read the clues. But only because I know, as an absolute clinical fact, that you would be the one to leave your backpack at the airport check-in counter while aggressively arguing with the ticketing agent about, like, the socioeconomic injustice of extra legroom fees.
Okay, wow. I am fiercely protective of consumer rights and my lumbar support. Thank you very much.
You'd still leave the bag, though.
Well, yeah, you're not wrong. I absolutely would leave the bag. But listen, when we get to the actual challenges, like the physical labor, that is all you, my friend.
Oh, 100%.
If there's a challenge involving heights or jumping off something or trusting a bungee cord assembled by a local teenager, I'm out. The human brain is not designed to plummet towards the earth on a rubber band. I will just take the time penalty.
See, I would absolutely crush a bungee jump because the mechanics of gravity make logical sense to me. But the eating challenges, the weird local delicacies, absolutely not.
Oh, you would perish.
If Phil Keoghan hands me a plate of fermented fish eyes, my somatic stress response is going to take over completely. I am dramatically screaming, I'm done, and I am calling an Uber to the nearest Marriott.
Honestly, it wouldn't even take fermented fish. You'd tap out the second they asked us to do, like, a synchronized local folk dance.
Okay, that's fair.
You possess zero rhythm, which I blame entirely on your rigid adherence to overanalyzing every single bodily movement. Let's be real. How many legs of the race do we even survive before our friendship is permanently destroyed? 2, maybe 3.
Have an episode.
Half.
The moment we are in a high-speed taxi chase in Tokyo and you start using your sarcastic analytical tone to tell me how I should optimize my hand-waving technique to flag the cab differently, I am throwing you out of the moving vehicle.
Fair enough.
But honestly, Tokyo would be my dream destination. Where would you want to go?
Oh, somewhere with a robust public transit system so I don't have to rely on your vibes-based sense of direction. Maybe Switzerland. Clean, efficient, no nonsense. The exact opposite of the chaotic environments our reality TV couples are forcing themselves into right now.
Which is actually the perfect segue.
Yeah.
Let's play a rapid-fire game based on the exact environments our couples navigated tonight. Passport or stay home?
Oh, I love this game.
I'm going to give you 5 destinations pulled straight from tonight's roster. For each one, you have to instantly decide. Book the flight immediately. Maybe one day, or, babes, I'm staying home.
Ready. Bring it on. I have deeply ingrained travel anxiety and an easily triggered fight or flight response, so this should be highly scientific.
Good. First up, Marissa and Edward's origin story. The Dominican Republic.
Book the flight immediately.
Instantly.
Instantly. The geography is stunning. The resorts are top tier. And, like, sociologically speaking, I would just sit at the hotel bar conducting an amateur ethnography on the absolute chaos of American tourists trying to force tropical romances.
Just people watching The Delusion.
Yeah. Yes. Plus, I wouldn't force my partner to wear matching color-coordinated outfits to a neighborhood cocktail party while there, so I'm already winning the cultural exchange.
A solid strategic choice. Okay, next up. Mallory and Rassett's connection? Turkey.
Maybe one day.
Just maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly historic. The Byzantine architecture is stunning. The culinary history is unparalleled. But considering Rassett claims prenups literally don't exist there and bring, quote, bad energy, I might need to consult a Turkish legal scholar and secure my assets in a blind trust before I fully commit to the trip.
Huh. I love that you are letting reality TV dictate your international legal paranoia.
I have to protect my peace.
Okay, what about Debbie and Mito's stomping grounds? Egypt.
Babes, I'm staying home.
Wow, harsh.
Listen, I respect the cradle of civilization, I really do. But if the local acting talent is anything like Mito staring into a mirror, aggressively quoting to be or not to be, while demanding a Hollywood agent, I cannot subject myself to that level of delusion.
It is a lot to take in.
The Dunning-Kruger effect is highly contagious, and I refuse to catch it near the Sphinx.
You are absolutely ruthless, but your self-preservation instincts are flawless. Okay, Ashia and Maxwell's wedding destination. Nigeria.
Oh, book the flight immediately.
Without a doubt.
I want to go strictly to witness Ashiza's godbrother Rod screaming on FaceTime in the flesh. Like, I want to attend this chaotic 6-day wedding setup, analyze the familial power dynamics, wear the gorgeous fabrics, and watch Maxwell's mother try to cure someone's acne through sheer willpower and the biological promise of grandchildren.
The people watching would be a masterclass in human behavior.
A masterclass.
I am so with you. The cultural immersion alone would fuel my analytical soul for a decade. Okay, last one. Shay and Annabelle's connection. The Philippines.
Maybe one day. I hear the archipelago is breathtaking, but I have a deeply ingrained fear of waking up horribly hungover like Shay and being aggressively massaged while getting berated about my life choices.
That massage was so aggressive.
Right. I need baseline peace on vacation, not a somatic stress test.
Completely valid. Okay, last question before we jump into the actual episode recap. What is the absolute most embarrassing thing you would definitively do if a camera crew followed you overseas?
Oh, this is so easy. And it goes right back to, like, linguistic imperialism. I would mispronounce every single street name with such aggressive, unearned confidence that the locals would actively start avoiding me.
Oh, you totally would.
I would be walking around Paris, calling the Champs-Élysées the, like, Champs-Élysées, entirely convinced I was right, and fighting anyone who corrected my butchered phonetics. It would be catastrophic failure of cultural integration. What about you?
Oh, I would absolutely succumb to my complete lack of emotional regulation and become inappropriately attached to a random neighborhood stray cat.
Yes, you would.
Like full-on sobbing on international television because I can't navigate the quarantine laws to take Senior Whiskers back through U.S. Customs. I would be sitting in a gutter in Rome, crying hysterically over a tabby cat, experiencing profound emotional dysregulation, while my fiance tries to explain that our visas are expiring.
That is painfully accurate. I can see the Reddit psychology threads diagnosing your attachment style already.
Oh, they would destroy me.
But babes, enough about our own hypothetical travel disasters. Let's get into 90 Day Fiance, where somehow booking the international flight is still the least complicated part of the relationship.
So true.
We have to start by analyzing this overarching theme of control this week. And nowhere is the delusion of control more potent than with Marissa and Edward.
Oh, the cocktail party in Bluebell, Pennsylvania. If I could roll my eyes any harder, I would detach my own retinas. The level of condescension radiating from Marissa is staggering. But it's not just condescension. It's a desperate, flailing attempt to manufacture cultural capital.
Exactly. Let's look at the mechanics of this scene. Marissa is taking Edward to a cocktail party with her friends, and she's literally dressing him.
Like a doll.
Like a doll. She's picking out his clothes, telling him to change his pants, policing his accessories. Edward even calls her a diva because she's taking so long to orchestrate this visual presentation. She's treating him less like a partner and more like a high-end accessory she bought on vacation.
The social commentators online have been calling her boss and CEO. And from a sociological standpoint, it is incredibly fitting. She is treating this grown 32-year-old man like a newly hired intern on a probationary period.
Yes.
She tells him to change into black pants so they can coordinate, and then she aggressively forbids him from wearing his bracelets. She tells him the bracelets aren't the vibe. Why? Because they represent his actual culture and personality, which threatens the sterile suburban finance bro aesthetic she's desperately trying to project.
I completely agree with the aesthetic control, but I want to push back on her core motivation for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
Is she intentionally being a toxic, domineering boss, or is she just experiencing massive cultural panic? Like, she realizes that the reality of bridging a massive socioeconomic gap is way harder than a vacation romance. She is terrified of her friend's judgment, so she gives him an actual list of demands in the car.
I refuse to give her the cultural panic pass. I really do. Panic implies a temporary loss of reason. What Marissa is doing is highly calculated assimilation enforcement.
Assimilation enforcement, wow.
Look at the rules of engagement she lays out in the car. She looks at him and says, "Don't drink too much." And then she fully bans him from talking about baseball. Baseball is his absolute passion in life.
It's all he knows.
It's the sport he knows everything about. She tells him not to talk about it because she wants him to ask her friends about their jobs and their lives so he can integrate into her world. She's demanding he erase his identity to make her friends comfortable.
It is incredibly uncomfortable to watch. She says, I want them to feel happy about this relationship instead of feeling like they can't hang out with us because Edward isn't the right fit.
The right fit, like a corporate hire.
Right. But let's analyze the power dynamics when they actually get to the party. The house is huge. The wealth is palpable. Edward is clearly intimidated, which is a completely natural human response to being dropped into a high-context environment where you don't know the rules. And he is immediately introduced to a finance advisor and an insurance agent.
Right, and let's talk about the linguistic disrespect from those friends. Her friends don't even bother to learn his name. Someone literally calls him Edwin.
I cringed so hard.
Marissa didn't prep her friends at all to be welcoming, but she prepped Edward like he was going into a hostile corporate deposition. The guys ask Edward what he wants to do for a living, and of course, Edward says he hopes to find a job involved with baseball, because that is his actual, authentic answer.
And Marissa is literally spying on him. She sneaks up on the conversation to make sure he's adhering to her bag order, and the finance guys immediately out him. Oh, we're talking about baseball. The look on her face, I mean, she looked like a manager who just caught her employee leaking trade secrets.
The classism here is bleeding through the screen. We have to bring in Pierre Bourdieu's concept of cultural capital. Marissa's HOA friends possess a specific type of cultural capital fluency in mutual funds, insurance policies, and upper-middle-class suburban norms.
Right.
Edward possesses a different kind of cultural capital fluency in hospitality, baseball, and Dominican culture. Marissa believes her friend's capital is objectively superior. Edward even noted in his confessional that these finance guys are the exact type of wealthy American tourists he would be serving back at his hotel job in the Dominican Republic.
That is such an amazing point.
That service industry power dynamic is heavily at play here. Marissa wants to show off her shiny new foreign fiancé, but she demands he sound like a Wall Street bro, which is a linguistic and cultural impossibility on day one.
Which brings us to the absolute crisis point of the episode, the intellectual match confession. This is where the control slips from just dictating his clothes to actively devaluing his cognition.
Oh, this made my blood boil.
Marissa pulls her friends aside, these supposedly sophisticated women, and completely throws Edward under the bus. She says she's having a hard time matching up to him intellectually.
Let's quote her directly because the phrasing is vital. She says, "There's a certain level of sophistication that the people I run with have. My relationship with Edward isn't necessarily one that's based on intellect. It was based on physical attraction at first."
She said that on camera.
She admits this on international television, while the man is standing 20 feet away trying to navigate a second language in a room full of strangers.
I physically gasped, because it's one thing to acknowledge a language barrier. It is incredibly difficult to express nuance, humor, or complex thought when you are actively translating in your head. But to state to your snobby friends that your partner fundamentally lacks intellect, it is so deeply demeaning.
And the friends just eat it up.
They do. One friend says, "This is not the Marissa I know," and then Marissa starts crying, playing the victim, saying she feels evil because she's frustrated and angry all the time, and Edward is nothing but nice to her.
She feels evil because her actions are deeply toxic. Let me break down the psychology of this setup. Marissa is operating like a corporate executive who hires someone for an entry-level position but demands CEO-level performance on their very first day.
Yes. That's exactly it.
She brought this man from a different country into a different culture with a different language and expects him to immediately hold court discussing actuarial tables with an insurance agent in Blue Bell, Pennsylvania. When he inevitably fails this rig test, she uses it to validate her own superiority.
And the internet absolutely ripped her to shreds for this. The viewers pointed out the massive hypocrisy. She is claiming to be this high-level intellectual, but she's staring blankly with vacant eyes, using the filler word like every other sentence.
Oh, the online commentary was legendary and highly accurate. One reviewer noted she's worried about his intellect, but they both use like every other word.
Spot on.
Another brilliantly called her a tourist sex pest who brought a guy home and is now furious he isn't Jeff Bezos.
Oh my God, a tourist sex pest, that is brutal.
And the most enraging part, her friends aggressively testing his English comprehension like he's a toddler. A friend said, "We asked who was the cook. He didn't know what that meant." And a viewer accurately pointed out, the second you say the word chef, he immediately understands. Why are they administering impromptu vocabulary quizzes at a cocktail party?
Because it's linguistic imperialism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're using their fluency in English to assert dominance.
It got so bad that Marissa actually felt compelled to do a damage control video on social media after the episode aired. The PR spin was dizzying. She gets online, fully backpedaling, and claims her comments don't imply Edward is stupid or an imbecile.
Right, sure.
She tried to blame the entire incident on the language barrier. She said, "I don't speak Spanish very well, and he's still learning English to a level of high fluency, so he can't get into deep conversations." She publicly apologized to him for making him look bad.
But here is the fatal flaw in that apology. You still willingly gave the producers the footage. You still sat there with your sophisticated coven and definitively stated your relationship lacked intellect and was purely physical. You cannot blame the editing process of the language barrier when the insulting words came directly out of your mouth in a complete, coherent English sentence.
No, you totally can't. And wait, we have to talk about the brilliant observation from the online recap community. They pointed out something incredible happening in the background during this exact scene.
Oh, yes. The lady in the pink dress.
Yes, the pink dress lady is the ultimate proof of Marissa's unreliable narration. While Marissa is whining to her friends about how Edward is completely incapable of socializing, Edward is in the background having an incredibly intense, engaged, hours-long conversation with a woman in a pink dress.
He was socializing perfectly fine.
Yes, he was reading social cues, making eye contact, and integrating, but Marissa couldn't see it because it contradicted her core narrative.
It is wild. Edward is actually succeeding at the exact task she assigned him, making connections. And she ignores it because he isn't executing it as a carbon copy of her finance bro friends. It makes you wonder, have you ever had a friend who completely alters their personality and throws their partner to the wolves just to maintain status in a specific crowd? Marissa is sacrificing her fiancé for clout in her HOA.
Absolutely. She doesn't want a partner, she wants a prop. And because the prop has free will and a personality, she is spiraling.
But if we are talking about partners acting as props and relationships built on a foundation of absolute delusion, we have to transition to New Orleans. Let's look at Debbie and Mido, where the control isn't about cocktail parties, it's about controlling a timeline and a narrative.
Oh, Mido. How does he get worse every single episode? Literal trash fire.
The Egyptian Marlon Brando, the absolute king of unearned confidence. The psychology of this entire relationship is a dark, fascinating case study.
Let's start with the kayak illusion. We open with them on a seemingly peaceful kayaking trip in the bayou. And you know me, my optimistic romantic heart was like, oh, look, they're bonding, they're out in nature, getting away from the screens. Maybe the silent treatment from their massive Halloween fight is finally over, and they can actually communicate.
Your optimistic heart needs to read a textbook on conflict resolution. They are not bonding, they are engaging in severe avoidance coping.
I know.
They're literally just ignoring the massive relationship-ending fight they just had. Debbie explicitly says she wants to take the pressure off and let the conversation unfold naturally, even though they only have a month left on a legally binding K-1 visa. It's not a peaceful kayak trip. It's a tense ceasefire built on a foundation of absolute denial.
Fair point, because as soon as they get back to dry land, the avoidance ends, and Mido returns to his true love, his own reflection.
Oh my God, the mirror scene.
He is standing in front of a mirror, delivering what I can only describe as the most unhinged acting performance of our generation. He is dramatically reciting Shakespeare, but he says, to be or not to be. This is the problem.
This is the problem. The problem is you, Mido. We are witnessing a textbook manifestation of the Dunning-Kruger effect. For those unfamiliar, it's a cognitive bias where people with low ability at a task overestimate their ability. Mildew has zero acting experience, zero training, and cannot remember the most famous line in English literature, yet he is aiming for the absolute top.
He wants to be Denzel.
He wants to be Brad Pitt. He wants to
Oh.
be Denzel Washington. Reality TV acts as a massive incubator for this specific brand of narcissism because the cameras validate their delusion of importance.
And then it gets worse. He gets on a video call with a Hollywood agent, and I am using massive air quotes here because this felt incredibly predatory. This agent basically just flirts with him.
Totally flirts.
He tells Mildew he's hot and good-looking, but then drops the hammer and says he needs to take English classes and acting classes before they can actually have a working relationship.
Which is Los Angeles industry code for, you have absolutely no discernible talent, but you have a symmetrical face. And I wouldn't mind grabbing an overpriced coffee if you're ever in California.
Right.
But Midow's cognitive bias filters out the rejection. He takes this as a massive victory. He tells the camera, I know myself, I'm a good actor, I deserve the good. The sheer audacity is almost mesmerizing.
So Mildew, flying high on this delusion, tells Debbie about the agent, and Debbie immediately hits the brakes. She tells him he needs to put the acting classes on hold so they can focus on the wedding. And she issues a firm ultimatum. She says, I just need to make sure you're here for us and not anything else. If you can't show you're 100% in, you can forget about acting classes and return to Egypt.
Let's analyze his reaction to a woman telling him he might have to abandon his dreams and leave the country. He just says, okay.
Okay.
The man has the emotional range of a damp sponge when it comes to Debbie. She makes an incredibly profound observation here, though. She says he comes alive for acting, his eyes light up, his energy shifts, but he goes entirely dead inside when they talk about the wedding. That is the most accurate read of human physiology she has had all season.
Which makes her next move so baffling. Because she knows he is dead inside regarding their marriage, she decides to pull the ultimate chaotic, toxic reality TV move. She tells him they are going on a surprise drive.
Oh, this was hard to watch.
She drives him to a random location, and it turns out to be a wedding chapel. It is an ambush chapel tour.
The ethics of this are horrifying. You do not surprise someone with a lifelong legal and spiritual commitment. And the visual of Mildew in the passenger seat, commentators astutely pointed out, he looked exactly like a 5-year-old who thought he was going to a toy store, only to realize the car is pulling into the dentist's office. The physiological panic was visible. He looked completely nauseated.
They walk into this chapel, and the venue coordinator asks, when are you thinking about getting married? And Debbie, without missing a single beat, says, 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
The sheer terror in Milew's eyes. You could physically see his soul leave his body and attempt to flag down a taxi back to Cairo.
It was the breaking point. The chapel coordinator mercifully leaves them alone for a minute, and the pressure cooker explodes. Mildew finally cracks. He looks at Debbie and admits, I think it's time to return back home. I can't find myself here.
And Debbie loses it. She storms out of the chapel. The cameraman is sprinting to follow her, and she literally collapses on the concrete outside, sobbing uncontrollably. Oh my God. Oh my God. It was intensely dramatic. But this is where I need you to weigh in on the massive conspiracy theory floating around the internet.
Oh, that Debbie is the real actor theory. I love this theory because it attempts to apply logic to an inherently illogical situation.
Yes. Okay, for the Snark squad who missed this, the theory posits that Debbie is actually the one acting. The argument is that Mildew has been completely checked out for 6 years. He's never told her he loves her. They are not physically intimate. He has shown zero interest in her life. But she paid for the K-1 visa, upgraded to a bigger apartment, and is dragging him to chapels.
Right.
So the theory is that they have a purely transactional arrangement. She promised to fund his acting classes and get him exposure on American television, and in exchange, he agreed to play the role of the fiancé. But now, she's flipping the script, demanding actual marriage, and he's panicking because that wasn't in the contract.
I will absolutely entertain this theory. Look at her performance outside the chapel. The way she collapsed on the ground, it was highly stylized. It was very telenovela. It was an Oscar-worthy performance of a heartbroken woman. So the reviewers are saying, Debbie's the real actress, not Mildew. This is the best physical performance in reality TV history since Paul ran into the Brazilian jungle.
I remember that. But I have to push back on the transactional theory. Is it really a calculated arrangement, or is this just extreme cognitive dissonance? I kind of feel bad for her. I think she is a woman who desperately wants a fairy tale. She has invested 6 years of her life and thousands of dollars into this man. It's the sunk cost fallacy. She believes that if she just pushes hard enough, the fantasy will become real.
I hear your empathy, but let's look at the reality. How could a grown woman who has lived a full life, maintained a career, and raised a child be this utterly blind to a man's blatant apathy unless she is in on the joke?
Denial is a powerful drug.
But if it's not a transactional arrangement, then the alternative is incredibly bleak. It means she is so desperately lonely that she will accept a man who openly loathes her company just to have a warm body sitting on the opposite end of the couch. And trapping a man who hates you in a surprise wedding venue is the definition of lunacy.
It is lunacy. But speaking of lunacy and the legal realities of marriage, let's move from a man running away from a wedding chapel to a man sprinting away from a legal contract. We have to discuss Mallory and Rasset.
Yes. The intersection of international romance and American property law, and of course, the return of Brandy.
Brandy.
The fact that Razet aggressively calls a grown American man named Brandon Brandy is a linguistic power play that will never not be funny to me.
Let's set the scene. We are at a cookout hosted by Mallory's friends, Michaela and Ren, and Mallory decides this casual backyard barbecue is the absolute perfect time to drop a massive legal bomb. She wants a prenuptial agreement.
Which, frankly, is the most logical thing we have seen on this show in a decade. Let's look at her financial portfolio.
Yeah.
Mallory is working 2 jobs. She owns a house that she worked incredibly hard to purchase. She received a significant financial settlement from a past accident. She has tangible, hard-earned assets. Wanting a prenup to protect those assets in a relationship with a high statistical probability of failure is just basic financial literacy.
I completely agree, but Rasset's reaction is explosive. He flat out refuses to sign it. He claims that prenups literally don't exist in Turkey, which, by the way, I looked up, and they absolutely do have legal mechanisms for asset division in Turkish civil law, so he is lying.
Shocking.
And he argues that it brings bad energy to start a marriage by planning for its end. He acts incredibly insulted, like his honor is being attacked.
His honor is a convenient shield for financial entitlement. He's essentially saying, I am sacrificing my geography for this relationship, therefore I am entitled to the green card, the house, and half of your accident settlement. The online commentary was vicious, calling him Scammer Rasset, because the dynamic shifted from romantic to hostile so quickly. He views her assets as communal property the second his plane touches down. But then we get the plot twist of the century.
I lost my mind watching this. The greatest twist of the season. Brandon, a.k.a. Brandy Mallory's ex-fling, the guy who aggressively threw popcorn at Rasset, the guy Rasset absolutely despises, completely sides with Rasset against Mallory.
It was a glitch in the matrix. It is a fascinating study in homosocial bonding. Eve Sedgwick writes about homosociality, the way men bond with each other through the exchange or management of women. Brandon looks at Mallory and says, did you ever consider that he packed up his whole life to move here? He gave up everything, family, culture, friends, and a working life. Brandon uses the exact logic of the sunk cost fallacy to defend Rasset's right to Mallory's money. He argues that signing a prenup defeats the purpose of Rasset's geographical sacrifice.
And Brandon has the audacity to call himself a hopeless romantic who desires longevity with a partner. Mallory's jaw was literally on the floor. She said it was mind-blowing. She expected her friend, her ex, to protect her, and instead he forms a boys' club with her foreign fiancé.
The irony is suffocating. Brandon, the guy Rasset wanted to banish to the Shadow Realm last week, is suddenly the only person defending Rasset's right to not sign a legally binding document. And how does Rasset respond to this defense?
The handshake. Rasset pulls Brendan aside outside, man to man, and apologizes for his past disrespect. He says, my heart says you are not bad. I feel this, and I am so sorry. And they shake hands. It was like watching 2 rival gang leaders declare a truce over a plate of potato salad.
I need to highlight the sheer transactional transparency of this moment. Rasset only decides Brandon is a good person. The absolute second, Brandon defends his right to access Mallory's assets. It is so mathematically precise. Rasset's internal logic is, oh, you want me to have access to her house and settlement money? You are my best friend now. We are brothers. Your past transgressions are forgiven.
The internet is fully convinced Brandy is going to be the best man at their wedding now.
I would bet money on it.
But I have to ask the Snark Squad, where do you stand on this? Are you team prenup, where you protect your peace, your house, and your settlement money? Or are you team hopeless romantic, where you believe he gave up his entire culture and family so you should share the wealth?
Team prenup, 100,000%. Brandon arguing that Rasset gave up everything is such a tired, manipulative reality TV trope. Let's break down what he actually gave up. He didn't lose his family. He could still FaceTime them every day. He didn't lose his culture. He just changed his zip code. He made a voluntary choice to move for a relationship. That voluntary choice does not legally or morally entitle him to a house Mallory purchased before she even knew his name. Period.
Period. I am hardcore team prenup too. Women need to protect their financial independence. But I kind of love the bizarre bromance. It's giving growth, even if it's rooted in mutual financial interest. But speaking of deeply rooted beliefs causing massive relationship fractures, we have to pivot to the holy wars. Let's talk about Katie and Josh and Shay and Annabelle.
Two tuples entirely defined by family systems theory, religious conditioning, and an absolute steadfast refusal to compromise.
Let's start with Katie and Josh. They are packing for a trip to California to celebrate Easter with Katie's family. And Josh, trying to have a mature conversation, drops a bomb. He says he doesn't want to indoctrinate his future kids into any specific religion. He wants to expose them to different beliefs and let them choose their own spiritual path when they are older.
Which, from a developmental psychology standpoint, is a perfectly reasonable modern stance for a couple to discuss. But Katie shuts it down with the force of a medieval crusade.
For a crusade.
She says raising them strictly Lutheran is a deal breaker. She uses this bizarre justification, saying her mom read the entire Bible, so it's a huge deal, and then she weaponizes her religion. She tells Josh, if you change your mind about it, Lutherans do believe in divorce.
Ouch. That is not a theological debate. That is a threat. And then, while they're arguing over how to pack a suitcase, Katie admits she's being moody and bitchy and blames it entirely on her ADHD. But the real psychological shocker is when the cameras sit down to interview Katie's mom.
This interview was brutal. It was a masterclass in the narcissistic family dynamic. You rarely see a parent drag their own child this mercilessly on national television.
Her mom brutally admits that Katie is bossy, that she's a lot, and that people get tired of it. She explicitly says that after 2 days with Katie, everyone is exhausted. She even brings up how Katie used to try and aggressively kiss everyone when she went out partying, predicting that she is going to burn all her relationships. It was a mother roasting her daughter like a Thanksgiving turkey.
The online psychology threads were highly concerned, and rightly so. Viewers are pointing out Katie's erratic behavior, the suspected alcohol abuse, and her constant use of OCD and ADHD as shields for her poor behavior.
It's a lot.
One user said, I sort of feel sorry for Katie after seeing her parents say they get tired of her after 2 days. It explains everything. If your own mother, your primary attachment figure, openly states that you are exhausting and unlovable in large doses, how do you ever build a secure, healthy relationship? Katie's desperate need for control and her intense mood swings are a direct trauma response to that maternal rejection.
It is incredibly sad. She's just a product of her environment. But let's switch from sad family dynamics to purely furious ones. Shay and Annabelle. The tension here is off the charts. Shay wakes up horribly hungover from his birthday party. Annabelle is furious because he was drunk, flirting with other women, and acting foolishly.
But look at her physical response to her anger. What does she do? She gives him an aggressive, punishing butt massage. Reviewers noted she was kneading his backside like a large hunk of pizza dough. It was deeply uncomfortable to watch because she is using physical touch to express rage.
She literally says, even though you acted terrible last night, I still love you.
Mm-hmm.
But then Shay decides to make the worst tactical decision of his life. He thinks, hey, I'm horribly hungover. My fiance is currently furious at me. Let's go to my non-denominational Southern megachurch.
It is a brilliant, albeit accidental, mechanism for sensory overload. You have to contrast the religious cultures here. Annabelle is a strict, traditional Roman Catholic from the Philippines. Filipino Catholicism is deeply reverent, high context, steeped in centuries of quiet ritual and solemnity.
Very traditional.
She walks into this American megachurch with the massive stage, the drum set, the strobe lights, the folding chairs, and she is immediately repulsed. She accurately compares it to a rock concert. The sociologist George Ritzer calls this the McDonaldization of society, where even religion is packaged for maximum efficiency, entertainment, and mass consumption.
And Annabelle is not hiding her disdain. She is rolling her eyes, she is yawning aggressively, and then she literally falls asleep in the folding chair, sitting right next to Shay's daughter, Allison, who is watching her like a hawk.
The sheer audacity to slip into REM sleep while you are actively being judged by your future stepdaughter in the house of the Lord, it is almost impressive from a boundary-setting standpoint.
But the fallout is massive. After the service, Allison confronts Annabelle in the church parking lot. She is absolutely furious. She tells Annabelle she had a horrible resting bitch face the entire service. Allison complains that Annabelle is trying to change everything about their lives without making any compromises or changes herself.
We need to debate this because the audience is split. Who is actually the disrespectful party here? Is it Annabelle for literally sleeping and eye-rolling in someone else's place of worship? Or is it the family for expecting a 54-year-old devout Catholic woman from a completely different hemisphere to instantly abandon her lifelong religious practices and culturally assimilate into a Southern megachurch concert?
I am going to push back and say Annabelle is in the wrong. I get that the sensory experience was overwhelming. Church is a deeply personal, traditional thing for her, and a drum set is jarring. But she is an adult. She didn't need to fall asleep. She could have respectfully observed the culture of the man she claims to love. Rolling your eyes and napping is petulant behavior.
I will defend Annabelle using basic biology. Sleep is often a somatic response to overwhelming stress and sensory overload. When the brain cannot process an environment, it shuts down. Furthermore, Allison is driving a minivan with a MILF mobile bumper sticker on the back, as astute viewers pointed out, yet she is acting like the ultimate moral authority of Paducah, Kentucky.
Okay, the bumper sticker is pretty funny.
Expecting Annabelle to perform joyful worship in an alien environment is cultural arrogance. They are a terrible match, fundamentally incompatible on every sociological level.
They really are. But if we think Allison was mad at Annabelle, it is absolutely nothing compared to our final couple. The tension here is dangerous. Let's get into Ashia and Maxwell.
Oh, the Nigerian nuptials. This segment was explosive. It is a masterclass in what psychologists call spiritual bypassing.
Yes. Let's start with Asha working overtime to win the approval of Maxwell's family. She brings his mom gift dresses and a purse from America. She's trying to buy favor, and then they get into the heavy stuff during the mother-in-law meetup.
And the mother-in-law's logic is culturally fascinating, albeit medically terrifying. She tells Asha she has absolutely no right to try and change Maxwell or fix his severe acne. Why? Because according to her theology, God created Maxwell exactly in his image, acne included.
I couldn't believe my ears.
And then she drops the medical breakthrough of the century. She claims that having babies will miraculously cure his severe acne.
I was dying. I was screaming at the television. Asha literally laughs at the idea that his skin condition will somehow clear up by bringing more children into the world. But then they negotiate the number of kids like it's a tense corporate merger. The mom demands 4 children. Ashia counters and compromises at 3, specifically 2 boys and 1 girl.
Because apparently, in their shared delusion, you can just order the gender ratio on Amazon Prime now. The magical thinking is spreading. But let's look at the cultural implications. In many cultures, fertility and childbirth are seen as a cure-all for physical and spiritual ailments. The mother-in-law is using her cultural authority to enforce reproduction.
But the real drama, the absolute peak of the episode, is the FaceTime call. Ashia calls her godbrother, Rod, back in the U.S. She tells him she's skipping the K-1 visa, abandoning the logical immigration process, and she's marrying Maxwell in Nigeria in less than a week.
Rod's reaction should be studied in university psychology classes. He is acting as the secure attachment figure, panicking over a disorganized attachment move. He starts with a brilliant grounding contrast. He asks what the temperature is where she is. She says she's in a t-shirt. He says it's 4 degrees in America. He is immediately establishing that they are in 2 entirely different realities, and then he absolutely blows up.
He screams. He loses his mind. He says she is lowering her standards, that she's making a massive life-altering mistake. He flat out accuses Maxwell of scamming her and fooling her. He shouts, he has nothing.
And Ashia, employing the ultimate defense mechanism, counters with he has enough and hangs up on him. Look, I fully align with Rod here. The online commentary broke this down perfectly. Ashia is engaging in severe spiritual bypassing.
Spiritual bypassing.
Yeah, it's a term coined by psychologist John Wellwood to describe the tendency to use spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep personal, emotional, or psychological unfinished business. Ashia is using the phrase, God told me to justify rushing into a marriage with a man 10 years her junior, whom she barely knows, and whose friend was already denied a visa by the embassy for suspected fraud. Rod is practically begging her to look at the tangible, glowing red flags.
But wait, hear me out. I am going to defend Ashi here. Sometimes, maybe she just knows. When you know, you know. Let's look at her life. She has a successful restaurant in Alabama. She is established. She is financially secure. Maybe she just wants love and is following her heart. Why should she have to wait 2 years for a bureaucratic visa process if she can marry him now, solidify their commitment, and start the spousal visa process? I am defending a woman following her heart.
You are defending a woman ignoring massive structural risk. There is a rumor floating around the internet that she already has a poster of him hanging in her restaurant back home. She is rushing this wedding not because God told her to, but because she's terrified the relationship will evaporate the second she gets on a plane back to Alabama. Rod is the only voice of reason on this entire season, and she hung up on him because reality threatens her fantasy.
Okay, we need to synthesize all this chaos. It's time to rank this madness. Let's evaluate every couple based on communication, trust, chemistry, and long-term potential.
I will lead this off, and I am placing Debbie and Mito in the absolute basement. Dead last. Negative points on the rubric. Communication. Non-existent, they speak entirely in avoidance and ultimatums. Trust. 0. He wants an agent, she wants a hostage. Chemistry. Below absolute 0, they possess the romantic tension of a damp sponge. Long-term potential. Only if the long-term goal is a prolonged legal battle over the K-1 visa fees.
I completely agree with that assessment. Debbie and Mito are actively harming each other's mental health. But who takes the top spot? I genuinely think, despite the horrific toxicity of the cocktail party, Marissa and Edward have the most chemistry. If you separate them from her awful friends, when they are alone, they clearly have a massive physical and energetic connection.
Having physical chemistry does not equate to long-term potential when one partner views the other as an intellectual inferior. But fine, I will concede they rank slightly higher than Mito. From a structural standpoint, I would actually put Mallory and Rassett near the top, shockingly. Yeah, because at least they're having real, tangible conversations about finances, legal boundaries, and property law, even if those conversations have to be mediated by the homeless social presence of Brandy.
That is a very valid point. They are dealing with reality, not just vibes. So we have Mallory and Rassett at number 1 for structural honesty, Marissa and Edward at number 2 purely for physical chemistry, Ashia and Maxwell at number 3 because, for better or worse, they are actually executing a wedding in 6 days.
Which leaves Katie and Josh at number 4 because they are doomed by religious incompatibility and the shadow of her mother's brutal televised honesty. Shay and Annabelle at number 5 because she is literally falling asleep in his place of worship while his daughter plots her demise. And Debbie and Mito at rock bottom. That feels sociologically accurate.
Okay, moving from rankings to cultural impact. What was the biggest culture shock moment for you in this discussion?
For me, it is the stark contrast between Marissa trying to force American corporate networking culture onto Edward versus Rassett's absolute rejection of American legal culture regarding the prenup. Marissa operates under the assumption that her culture is inherently superior and Edward must assimilate instantly to survive. Rassett operates under the assumption that his culture's lack of prenups makes him immune to Mallory's very real American assets. Both are weaponizing culture to exert control over their partner's resources, whether those resources are social capital or actual cash.
It is brilliant when you frame it like that. If I were dropped into Edward's situation, the culture shock would have broken me. Being told what to wear, what to say, and what parts of your identity to hide by the person who is supposed to be your safe harbor, I would have cried in the HOA bathroom and booked the next flight back to the DR. And Annabelle's rigid, high-context Catholic expectations slamming into the wall of a Southern concert-style megachurch. That is pure, unadulterated culture shock. Your brain literally cannot process the environment.
Exactly. Let's distill this even further. We need to identify the absolute biggest green flag and the most glaring red flag of all these interactions. I will take the green flag.
The floor is yours. Find something positive in this mess. I dare you.
The biggest green flag, and it pains me on a cellular level to say this, is Brandon and Rassett acting like mature adults and shaking hands in the driveway. Yes, I know it was hypocritical of Rassett to only respect Brandon when Brandon agreed about the money, but the fact that two grown men, an ex-partner and a current fiancé, stood outside, de-escalated a physical rivalry involving thrown popcorn and said, "I respect you, let's move forward," is the healthiest, most regulated communication we have seen in 11 weeks of this show.
You know what? I have to concede that. A rare, fleeting moment of emotional regulation. Okay, my biggest red flag. It absolutely has to be Debbie locking a man in a surprise wedding venue.
It is the definition of false imprisonment masked as romance.
It truly is. You cannot ambush someone with a lifelong legal, financial, and spiritual commitment. It removes their agency entirely. But my honorable mention for a red flag is Ashia rushing a wedding in 6 days while her godbrother literally screams he is a scammer on FaceTime. Ignoring the people who have known you your whole life because of a spiritual feeling is incredibly dangerous.
Both are completely unhinged manifestations of control. Okay, final thoughts. Let's project into the future. What is your biggest prediction for the next chapter of this chaos?
Okay, my couple, most likely to definitively break up. I genuinely think Mito was getting on that plane. He looked into the camera and said, I can't find myself here, and I think the primal urge for self-preservation is going to kick in. He is going to pack his bags, leave the acting dreams behind, and fly back to Egypt.
I vehemently disagree. My completely chaotic, yet sociologically plausible theory, Mido legally marries Debbie.
No.
He goes through with it. He marries her strictly to secure the green card, move to Los Angeles, and become a struggling waiter while waiting for his big Hollywood break.
Yeah.
He will endure the psychological torment of the marriage just long enough to get the permanent paperwork because his Dunning-Kruger delusion is stronger than his misery.
Oh my God, that is so dark, so cynical, but like so entirely plausible. Okay, my couple, most likely to surprise everyone. I think Annabelle and Allison are going to have a breakthrough. I think Annabelle will apologize for the somatic sleep response in church. They will bond over something domestic, like making dinner, and they will find a middle ground.
Your relentless optimism is exhausting. I predict Brandy becomes Razit's best man at the wedding. The homosocial bromance is simply too strong to deny. They're going to be picking out matching tuxedos by next month.
I would pay premium pay-per-view money to see Brandy standing at the altar holding the rings while Mallory glares at both of them.
It is the only logical conclusion to that storyline.
Babes, that is our thorough breakdown of this week's absolute sociological disaster. But we need to hear from you, the Snark Squad. Hop into the comments or hit us up on social media. We have burning questions for you to analyze.
Which country from tonight's discussion is at the top of your travel bucket list? And more importantly, from a psychological perspective, which delusional couple are you still secretly rooting for, even though you know you shouldn't?
And do not forget to tell us, what is the absolute most embarrassing thing you think your fight or flight response would force you to do on international TV? Because my stray cat breakdown is locked and loaded.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to our spiraling analysis. Remind your reality TV-loving besties to subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, and share the recap.
Yes, we need the whole squad here every week to unpack this madness. Until next time, remember, stay curious, stay chaotic, and we'll see you on the Snark side.